I come with no other agenda than desperately trying to help people who are in need. And I see that as part of my role, is that why else would I be here if I'm not using this role properly to influence and help people where I can. And I like a big challenge. I do like that, but I can't do it on my own.
In search of a tranquil moment away from the scrutiny of the public, Prince William made his way to St. Mary's Church in Norfolk on a Sunday morning when the church was relatively quiet. An encounter with a young girl whose words would touch his heart in ways that he could never have imagined would soon follow what began as a straightforward visit for the purpose of introspection. It was a beautiful Sunday morning in Norfolk, and St. Mary's Church was sitting quietly under blue skies. The old stone walls of the church were covered with vines. A small but thoughtful gesture from the parishioners was the arrangement of fresh lilies near the altar, which carried a faint aroma of applewood, incense, and fresh lilies. The air inside was cool and carried the aroma. The members of the congregation arrived one by one, and their soft footsteps and quiet greetings blended in with the sound of coats being removed and hymnals being opened. When people began to settle in, the wooden pews made a soft creaking sound. At the same time that sunlight was pouring in through the stained glass windows, it was scattering vibrant shades of red, blue, and green across the stone floor. This led to the space having a calming and uplifting glow. One of the people who was worshiping was Prince William. It was impossible to miss him, despite the fact that he was not drawing attention to himself. How come? Maintain your attention to find out. His regal bearing was reflected in the navy suit that he wore, which matched his attire. He exuded an air of silent dignity at all times. It was his easygoing and friendly smile that gave the impression that he was neither a royal nor a royal, but rather just another person looking for connection. A few of the locals were the recipients of his heartfelt greetings, which were straightforward and genuine. Then, with the ease that comes with years of experience, he selected a seat near the back of the church, achieving the ideal balance of being approachable while still maintaining his privacy. A public appearance was not made at this time. No cameras or reporters were present at the scene. In an effort to find some peace and quiet, Prince William had traveled all the way here to escape the never-ending pressures of royal life. From his perspective, this church was more than just an old structure. It was a rare place where he could let go of the weight of his titles and responsibilities, even if it was only for a short period of time as he was sitting there. But on that particular morning, there was a sense of something in the air, something that was subtle but indisputable, as if the church itself had a premonition that something significant was about to take place. During the time that the church was filled with the soulful notes of the organist and the familiar hymn that filled every corner of the church with music, Prince William became aware of something that no one had anticipated. A small figure was seated in the middle of the tall, dark pews, which were located close to the altar. At first glance, it was almost impossible to miss her. She was so small that her frail frame was almost indistinguishable from the vastness of the church. The gentle light that emanated from the stained glass windows illuminated her entire body, imbuing the moment with an almost enchanted quality. It was estimated that the young girl was no more than 5 years old. She had a head full of brown hair that was curly and fell over her shoulders like a messy halo. She sat by herself on the edge of the front pew, her feet gently swinging back and forth. Her feet were too short to reach the floor. There was something about it that seemed a little out of place, despite the fact that it was a sweet and innocent image of childhood. The fact that he was about to have an experience that would alter the course of his life was completely unknown to him. In the beginning, William was under the impression that she was waiting for her parents. Of course, they would show up very quickly. Nevertheless, as the minutes went by, nobody showed up. The young girl did not appear to be in the least bit scared. While she sat quietly, she was surrounded by a large group of adults who were lost in prayer and contemplation. In her hands, she was holding a picture book that had seen better days. With her small fingers, she carefully traced the edges of the pages as if they were a very special asterisk. She slowly turned the pages of the book. Her wide eyes followed the patterns of light as they danced on the stone floor as she occasionally looked up at the stained glass windows. She did this every so often. There was a sense of awe and awestruckness in the way that she observed, as if she perceived something enchanted happening in the colors that were changing. The fact that she was by herself was not the only thing that drew William's attention. It was the way that she appeared peaceful and self-assured. It appeared as though she was much older than her years, as she sat so still and with a sense of belonging. Neither the large space nor the fact that she was by herself bothered her. On the contrary, she appeared to be completely at ease, as if she had her own private reason for being there. William's curiosity increased whenever he watched for a longer period of time. Why did she come here by herself? Did she get lost? Or was there a more profound reason for her to be in this location? These inquiries remained in his mind, but he did not move from his seat. Rather, he remained silent and simply observed. When the service came to an end and the congregation started to leave, the air was filled with the soft rustling of coats and the low murmurs of the congregation. But the young girl did not move from her current location. Her attention had not shifted from the picture book that she was holding in her hands. She appeared to be unaffected by the activity that was occurring around her, as if the world beyond her did not exist. However, William did not move at all. He remained seated, his gaze fixed on her as he waited. In the church, which was completely empty, she stood out even more. It was very unsettling for the prince to see her sitting there by herself because there was no sign of her parents and no one was coming to her. It was William who got up from his seat and started walking in the direction of the young girl. The stone floor was cool, and his steps were slow and quiet, each one being gentle against the surface. Because he did not want to startle her, he moved very carefully. While he was getting closer, he lowered himself to her level and crouching down so that he wouldn't appear to be too tall or intimidating. His tone was soothing and kind as he greeted you with a gentle greeting. He gave her a friendly smile, the kind that could make anyone feel secure, even a young child sitting by themselves in a large church. "Just what is your name?" The young lady slowly gave him her attention, her large hazel eyes meeting his gaze. The expression on her face was one of surprise for a brief moment, as if she had not anticipated that anyone would take notice of her. But in the same instant, her gaze became more gentle, and her expression of curiosity became quite obvious. She did not appear to be afraid. Rather, she appeared to be a little uncertain about what to say. She then began to speak after a brief pause. Her voice was gentle but steady, and for someone of her size, there was an unusually calm tone in her tone. Her voice was soft but steady even. Even though she was only a child, it seemed as though she was giving careful consideration to the words that she spoke. William remained in a crouching position, maintaining a steady smile and speaking in a soft tone. Because he did not want to pressure her, he allowed her to take her time. During the period of time that passed between them, he became aware of how calm and focused she appeared to be, and he found her presence to be both intriguing and comforting because of this. She spoke softly, her voice low but firm, as if she were pleased with her name. "My name is Rosie," she said. William repeated those words with a smile on his face and a warm tone in his voice. There was a moment of hesitation on Rosie's part, as her fingers coiled themselves tightly around the edges of her book. For a moment, her eyes wandered to the vacant seats that surrounded her, and then they returned to William. There was a trace of uncertainty manifesting itself on her petite face. She spoke very slowly, her voice barely audible above a whisper. "It was just me who came." When she responded, the prince was taken aback to a great extent. How could a child of such a young age go to church by themselves? The answer will take you by surprise. Not only was it remarkable, but it was also concerning. When he was trying to process what she had said, his thoughts were racing for a brief moment. Will your mother or father be aware that you are present? Although he made every effort to maintain his composure, his concern could be heard in his voice as he asked the question in a soft voice. The expression on Rosie's face was solemn as she slowly nodded. According to her explanation, "Mommy says I can talk to God whenever I want." Her fingers were still firmly wrapped around the book she was reading. "I wanted to have a conversation with him about Daddy today." A 5-year-old girl who was coming to church by herself to talk to God about her father was the subject of her words, and the simplicity of her words struck him like a wave. In the process of trying to find the appropriate words, William felt his heart tightening in his chest. After hearing Rosie's straightforward words, William felt a tightening in his chest. It was both heartbreaking and moving to see a child ask such weighty questions from the perspective of their innocence. He took a seat next to her in a calm manner, making sure that his posture was open and relaxed so that she would feel comfortable taking a seat. In spite of the vastness of the church, he desired to give her the impression that she was not alone. "To what extent would you like to discuss your father?" His tone was gentle and kind as he inquired, with the expectation that she would feel at ease enough to divulge her thoughts. When Rosie looked up at him, her eyes remained wide with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper, something that seemed to come from a place that was beyond her years. When she nodded, her curls began to move slightly around her face as a result of the movement's effect. She started off by saying, "Daddy is a soldier," and her tone was calm and collected, as if she had said this 1,000 times before. "He has a lot of bravery, but he is a long way away now." According to Mommy, he is in heaven. As the words that Rosie had spoken settled in the air between them, William experienced a profound and recognizable ache in his chest. He was profoundly affected by the death of a parent, particularly his father, who was a significant figure in his life. Few people could comprehend the depth of his feelings. He had a profound understanding of the burden of grief, the heaviness that lingered for a considerable amount of time after the initial pain had subsided. His own personal loss of Princess Diana, who was his mother, had been the defining moment of his life. The experience had a profound impact on his outlook, his values, and his path. What is it about her that has amazed you the most? While the passage of time had a moderating effect on the sorrow he carried from that day, it never completely left him. Regardless of the amount of time that had passed, it remained a constant presence, a shadow that he was unable to break free of. It was now a component of his identity, and it had become a part of him. While he was listening to Rosie, he noticed something that was similar to his own experience, which was the struggle with a loss that shouldn't be something that a child has to go through. However, what struck him was the resiliency that was evident in her voice, the quiet strength that she displayed in spite of the emotional burden that she carried. Here was a young girl, no more than 5 years old, who had already been through something that was beyond her comprehension. At her age, she was experiencing the same kind of loss that he had experienced. The weight of it, however, did not overwhelm her in the same way that it did him. Her response to her grief, on the other hand, was one of bravery and a sense of composure that seemed to be beyond her years. She had discovered a way to deal with her melancholy by seeking solace in her own unique way, through the combined efforts of prayer and faith. Being able to see this tiny figure facing the world with such bravery was an incredible experience to be a part of. William stood motionless for a considerable amount of time, his heart swelled with admiration for her. He couldn't help but think about how much strength it took for someone of such a small size to be able to retain such a great deal of sadness while still maintaining such composure. In spite of the fact that he could feel a lump forming in his throat, he maintained his steady voice and said, "That is very brave of you, Rosie. About what did you wish to have a conversation with God?" The small fingers of Rosie traced the edges of the pages of her book with a quiet concentration as her gaze lowered to the pages of her journal. The following words that she spoke were so soft that he had to slightly lean in order to hear them. "I had a question for him. Does Daddy know that I miss him? Does he still have the ability to see me?" William was profoundly affected by the straightforwardness of Rosie's inquiry, which caused a wave of feelings to travel through his body. The quiet, almost desperate wonder of whether those we've lost can still be with us in some way was something that he understood all too well. He understood that feeling better than anyone else. Are they able to see the insignificant moments that make up our lives, the victories that are not loudly celebrated, and the days that are filled with sadness? For a number of years, he had been pondering whether or not his mother was still keeping a watchful eye on him, observing both his happiness and his sorrow from a remote location. For the same reason that Rosie had, he had clung to the hope that his mother could still be a part of his world, even though she was no longer physically present. However, despite the fact that it was a question that everyone at some point in their lives holds in their heart, it was a thought that never had a definitive answer. While Rosie's words lingered in the air, William suddenly experienced a sharp pain in his chest to the same degree as before. It was as if he had been transported back in time to his childhood, where he reflected on the feelings of isolation and bewilderment that accompanied his loss. The unanswered question that had been in his mind, unspoken but always present, was brought to his attention once again. He saw the same weakness in Rosie's eyes, a quiet search for comfort, for connection, and for a sign that the love of the lost is never truly lost. He saw this in Rosie at the same time. Additionally, her sorrow was gentle and delicate. However, it was evident in the manner in which she posed questions with such a low-key intensity. The experience was exciting. Few people have the courage to ask questions that are so profound and sincere. But here was this defiant youngster who was quite small. She seeks peace in her own unique way by reaching out to the Lord with a bravery that many adults are unable to match. The sincerity and fortitude with which she carried herself touched something profound within William, reawakening memories and feelings that he had believed had been buried for such a long time. Despite her young age, she exhibited a remarkable level of maturity. It dawned on William that the experience of loss did not only shape adults, it also had an effect on children, albeit in ways that were frequently overlooked. Despite the fact that she was still young, Rosie had already experienced a level of sorrow that there are many people who would spend their entire lives learning to navigate. There was, however, something remarkable about the way in which she was confronting it. She did not attempt to conceal her mourning. In many respects, she was even more powerful than the grief itself, and she was confronting it with a quiet courage that was even more powerful. William's heart swelled with compassion as he looked at her, and his voice was soft but steady as he responded to her. According to him, your father is aware that you miss him, and his words were filled with a lot of feeling. Further, I believe that he is still able to see you, Rosie. Although you may not be able to see him, he is always present with you. The moment his eyes met hers, he experienced a momentary feeling of an unspoken connection between them. It was a connection that was formed by the fact that they had both experienced love and loss in their lives. Although his voice was barely above a whisper, he continued, "He is always in your heart." It seemed as though he was attempting to cling to the profound truth that he was expressing. When William reached into his pocket, he felt around until his fingers came into contact with the smooth edges of a small silver coin. As a token of personal significance, it was a coin that he could never be seen without in his possession. Although the coin was uncomplicated, it had a profound significance for him. An image of St. George slaying the dragon, which is represented as a symbol of bravery, protection, and courage, was engraved on the surface of the object. It was something that he had carried around with him for many years, serving as a constant reminder of his personal responsibilities, his faith, and the difficulties he encountered as a member of the royal family. In times when he required strength, particularly when confronted with adversity, the coin served as a quiet companion and was more than just a piece of metal. It was his good luck charm. When he pulled the coin out of his pocket, he felt the cool metal between his fingers. He then looked at Rosie, his heart heavy as a result of the connection that they had just formed. He extended his hand to her, while maintaining a steady but gentle grip. The tone of his voice was filled with a quiet sincerity that was a perfect match for the occasion. He whispered, "This is for you. I am reminded to have courage by a coin that I have. Perhaps it will serve as a reminder to you as well that your father is always here to watch over you." The eyes of Rosie grew wider. During the moment that she was hesitantly reaching out a small hand, her eyes fell upon the coin. While her fingers were curled around it, she carefully grasped it in her hands. It was as if she was aware of its significance, and despite the fact that she was still young, she looked up to him. The expression of gratitude could be seen in her wide hazel eyes. The tone of her voice was soft and quiet, and it was filled with respect as she whispered, "Thank you." It seemed as though the signal was beginning to comprehend her even before she had a complete comprehension of its meaning. There was a change in the relationship between them at that very moment, something that went beyond the sound. The expression on Rosie's face, which had been solemn and reflective just a few moments earlier, suddenly changed to one of genuine joy. The smile, which was so unadulterated and brimming with light that it seemed to illuminate the entire church, was beginning to fade away. A new sense of peace took over, a calm assurance that things will work out, will be correct, and okay. And the smile that she gave him was something that could light up even the darkest corners of the world. Her pain seemed to subside for a moment, and a new feeling of peace took over. Her voice was filled with renewed confidence as she whispered, "I believe that would be something that my father would enjoy." The look in her eyes conveyed an unadulterated sense of tranquility. She spoke with a quiet confidence, as if she were speaking with people who have just discovered a new source of comfort, a new way to connect with her father, whom she misses so much. Her words did not contain any trace of uncertainty or sadness. A smile returned from William to her. A hot sensation began to develop in his chest. This was a moment that he would never forget, moments that brought to his mind the power that can be found in seemingly insignificant actions and the resilience of the human spirit. Interactions between them were not overlooked by anyone. More than a few of the attendees of the meeting paused to observe from a distance. The conversation that Prince William and Rosie had, which was both quiet and beautiful, was the one that captured it. With the passage of time, it appeared that the temperature of the air was rising. When it comes to people of all ages, from the youngest children to the oldest, the tenderness of this scene is something that cannot fail to leave an impression on anyone. There was without a doubt a profound quality to the straightforward nature of the relationship that they had with one another. The conversation was more than just a conversation. It was a moment of pure human compassion that bridged the gap between adults who have experienced loss and children who are grieving the loss of a loved one. For a number of minutes, William sat next to Rosie. She regaled him with tales of her most treasured recollections, the kind of fleeting, priceless moments that only a daughter could truly cherish. When she was feeling down, her father would take her to the park and sing silly songs to make her laugh. He would also push her up on the swings and push her high on the swings. Her words, despite their apparent simplicity, were brimming with longing and affection. In addition to that, she shared with him how she would try to make her mother laugh whenever she was feeling down by doing small things that would bring joy in the midst of the suffering. In spite of the fact that his heart was heavy, William listened with rapt attention. Rosie had found a way to honor her father's memory by carrying forward the love and joy that he had once given her, and he couldn't help but admire the way that she had learnt to cope with the loss of her father. William experienced a profound sense of emotion by the time they made their final goodbyes. The experience had left an indelible impression on him, serving as a reminder of the significance of simply being present for other people, the power of kindness, and the healing nature of connection. Upon departing from St. Mary's on that particular day, he took with him a revitalized sense of purpose, and he was reminded of the unassuming power that can be discovered in instances of human compassion. Word of the encounter quickly spread throughout the small community, carried on the lips of locals who had witnessed the heartfelt exchange that took place as a result of the encounter. The narrative of how Prince William, during a moment of personal reflection, had taken the time to comfort a young girl who was grieving the loss of her father, struck a chord with each and every person who listened to it. Not only was it an act of royalty reaching out to others, but beyond that, it was a profound display of humanity. Everyone from different walks of life, from the elderly parishioners who had been attending services at St. Mary's for decades, to the younger families who attended services on a regular basis, participated in the conversation and shared their experiences. Every single person was moved by the unassuming consideration of the future king. Rosie and her mother experienced a significant turning point as a result of the day. Having a conversation with a member of the royal family was not the only thing that took place. It was a moment of belonging and solace that would remain in their memories for the rest of their lives. It brought to their attention the fact that even in the midst of their most profound sorrow, they were not alone. They experienced a sense of peace and reassurance that, even in the absence of a loved one, they could still feel supported and connected to something that was larger than themselves. This was brought about by the warmth of William's words as well as the gift of the silver coin. It was a simple act of kindness that demonstrated to them that they were a part of a larger community, one that cared for them even when they were at their most vulnerable. The memory of Rosie's bravery remained with William for a considerable amount of time after he had left St. Mary's on that particular day. He took her resiliency with him, which served as a powerful reminder of the fact that even the most insignificant of us can possess a formidable amount of strength. At a time when the world was frequently fraught with unpredictability and suffering, Rosie had demonstrated to him that there was always hope and always light, even in the face of loss. Her unassuming bravery was something that he would always keep close to him, serving as a wellspring of motivation whenever the burden of the world seemed to overcome him. Let me know what you think about the thoughtful gesture that Prince William made. Have you ever been a witness to a moment when someone's day was changed by your act of kindness? Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that will inspire you more.